Hello and welcome back to the ROI channel, the channel that's obsessed with the art and science of return on investment. And today he's back, my brother from the other side of the ocean, one of Twitter's favorite commentators, always with an interesting story to tell, the wandering investor himself, Mr. Ladislas Maurice. Housekeeping disclaimer, nothing we say here today is advice. It's just two crazy guys with their opinion, giving their take on the world. For those of you who haven't seen the first interview with Ladislas, that'll definitely be worth your time. Make sure you click the link that will be in the description. Links to his details will also be in the description, where you can contact Ladislas to get advice on private consulting with international real estate, citizenship or residency, international tax strategies, company formation, unique solutions, and of course, relationship advice, which is a service of his I lean on quite a bit. Just kidding with that. Go and visit the site, link in the description, guys, and Ladislas will be able to connect you to the most appropriate person depending on your goals. He's helped me out tremendously with that, and so I'm very grateful to have him on the show. A quick note on the sponsors. Podcast today sponsored by the Options Mavericks. That is my premium Substack. You can check the link out in the description, where I show you how I run a one-man insurance company. Profits to date up 36%. So with all that being said, Ladislas, how are you, my friend? And where are you joining us from around the world today?
Good to see you again, Benjamin. I'm in Montenegro.
Montenegro, and there's a little bit going down in Montenegro, which I'd love you to fill us in. Why don't we start there, and then we'll talk about, because you were telling me some things before we started rolling that blew my mind. So maybe we'll start there, and then we'll talk about what else has been news since we last spoke.
Yeah, so Montenegro is absolutely booming, and not for the reasons that one would typically expect. Generally, I've been fairly bearish European real estate because of the energy crisis, because disposable income will be struggling. People will be struggling. Their disposable income will be more limited. Inflation's been really high. So I've been a bit wary of markets where Europeans tend to go on vacation, right? But then what happened is the war started between Ukraine and Russia, and Montenegro got a massive influx of population into the country. So Montenegro is historically generally about 600,000 people. So it's a really small country south of Croatia. They are in NATO, but not in the European Union. So they've been quite welcoming of Russians, just like Turkey has, which is also in NATO. So the main thing against Russians moving to a place has been more European Union membership than NATO membership. So what's happened is the population grew about 10% in 1 year since the start of the war between the Ukrainians and Russians moving here.
10%,
so
an entire population
10%, yeah. So 60, yeah, 60,000 Russians and Ukrainians moved here. So my own parents have retired here. They live here. They moved here a few years ago because I was doing some flips here, and then they came to visit me, and they never left one of my flips, which they eventually took over. So
I
they had to
I hope they're paying their rent, mate. Otherwise, we'll have to test those European landlord laws.
They bought the apartment from me, and then prices shot up about 40%. So they made a great deal. So they were trying to renew their residency cards, and it's a process that would typically take about 3 weeks, and this time it took them about 2.5 months.
And that because of the influx of
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a few, and you see the same thing in Belgrade in Serbia. A ton of Russians and Ukrainians have moved there, but in Montenegro, because the country is just so much smaller, the impact is a lot bigger.
And Serbia due to join the EU in what, end of 2025? Is that
not
correct?
Really? No. Okay. They keep saying Montenegro will, but that's being pushed back all the time. Serbia is far off. That's really far off.
Okay.
So what's happened is it's it's a real shot in the arm for the Montenegrin economy and real estate. So obviously, a lot of these people just came here, bought real estate, because one way of obtaining residency is to own real estate in Montenegro. So a lot of people just bought real estate. And essentially prices went up 40% in 1 year in euros, 40% in 1 year, which is absolutely insane. And rents have gone up a bit over 30% in 1 year.
Yeah.
So the yields haven't really changed that much, but the entry price has really gone up quite significantly. At the same time, we've seen a lot of Turks move to Montenegro because of the political situation in Turkey, and a lot of Germans, a ton of Germans, moving down to Montenegro because they don't like what's happening in Germany politically.
Yeah.
So Montenegro is proving to be a bit of a safe haven for everyone. And it turns out that in a world of greater uncertainty and volatility, people are flocking to such places. So now actually Montenegrin real estate is truly becoming it's almost like the VIX, right?
You can buy call options on Montenegrin REITs.
Yeah. So, and it offers amazing lifestyle. So, I have a hard time doing more deals here now that prices are up 40%.
I bet. But you always find a way. I know you do.
We'll see. I mean, I already have real estate here, so I already have my positions, etc. So I'm fine. But yeah, it's quite crazy. And the wave of people who have come in is a very positive wave. So historically,
well, I guess people with enough money to buy real estate. So presumably they're business people or had been employed with skills, all that sort of thing. So that's hugely positive for the underlying economy of the nation.
Hugely positive. So at the same time, prices have
Australian
gone up.
Politicians take note.
Yeah. It's hugely positive because historically, when there was always a lot of Russian investment in Montenegro, but it was more the kind of rentier class of Russians from Moscow that made money. They bought like investment apartments and they just came here for like 2 weeks every year, etc. But now it's like Russians that actually come here, live here full time. They live here full time. So it's not just people coming in for the 3 months of like peak summer. They're here in winter. They're here all year round. They're helping the local shops, the local economy, etc. Most of them work online. So they're getting income from overseas. They're paying some taxes on that as well. Because a lot of people don't just buy real estate. Some people create a company to get residency. That's also another option.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you just want Montenegrin residency, you just create a company locally. So it implies some taxes are paid as well.
But what are we talking? Are we talking territorial tax, or it's just so it's not a territorial
worldwide taxation?
Okay.
With
what a corporate
rates enforcement.
Like? Okay.
Yeah, it's like a lot of Latin America, like worldwide income. But then, like, do I think that the Russians who are receiving their income from Russia are declaring it to the Montenegrin tax authorities?
Of course,
they
should. Every last year
they are. Yeah, I doubt they are. But anyways, they're here. They're paying VAT. They're supporting the local economy, and a lot of them are creating local jobs as well. Because the husband comes. Mm-hmm. He's working online, and the wife, at some point, starts a business here locally. So you have all these like new little coffee shops and stores and nail salons and things targeting Russian tourists. So it's a massive boost for the economy. And then in terms of Ukrainians, the profile of Ukrainians coming here is very different from the profile of Ukrainians moving to Canada or the UK or the European Union. Because when you move here as a Ukrainian, you don't get any free money, right? So all the lower quality Ukrainians who left, they invariably went to the European Union, right? So the ones that, for example, Paris, I was there a few weeks ago or 2 months ago, and there were a whole bunch of homeless. Well, they're not even homeless. They're just old men, 60, 65, who just drink like wine on the street and have
less
big beards,
economically productive individuals in society.
Exactly.
We say, yeah.
So they essentially all got a free, because men above the age of 60 are allowed to leave Ukraine. Men below the age of 60 are not allowed to leave Ukraine. So essentially, it's all the women who left and men above the age of 60. So all these guys are now in Western Europe. They got a free train ride to go to Western Europe. They got free accommodation, and they're getting free money, and now they're begging on the street drinking. So these people are absolutely not showing up or women who need like support from the government with their children. These people are not showing up in Montenegro because they don't get anything from the government. So all the Ukrainians
Ukrainian
moving
that
here
ends up in Montenegro is someone with, if not means, at least skills to support themselves through their own capacity. Yeah,
exactly. So the ones moving to Europe are the ones who need support from Western European governments, or the ones who want jobs or career, which is positive as well. But the entrepreneurs or the ones who work online, a lot of them are moving to places like Serbia, like Montenegro.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. Yeah, good luck to them. We wish them well. In terms of those real estate markets, so the two key themes recently in capital markets have been rising cost of capital and rising inflation, which is really lack of capex or rising cost of energy. What's the real estate market like in, let's say, Serbia and Montenegro? A lot of that, or is any of that able to be financed, or it's not a leveraged economy, and that's why you've seen such a boom, and you'd think that it's probably not going to be impacted too much should rates continue to hike as the cycle progresses?
So Montenegro, pretty much a cash market. There is a little bit of leverage, but very little in the system. Essentially, it's a cash market. Serbia, there are mortgages, quite a lot of mortgages. So that is a different scenario. So as rates go up, the market in Serbia will struggle a bit more. In Montenegro, it'll have zero impact.
Okay, interesting. So you props to you, because you called this last time we spoke, that going into these unlevered economies, it really doesn't matter too much what happens in terms of credit cycles around the globe. You're getting your yields, and then if you pick your place right, the human capital moving in, putting pressure, demand side pressure on places where there's limited supply and limited leverage. So far from what we've seen, things are playing out. Who writes mortgages in Serbia? Like, who lends to
local banks?
Yeah, just local banks.
Yeah, local banks.
Okay, interesting. In terms of anything else, is there anything that surprised you in terms of either real estate, human flows, capital flows, or currency fluctuations? Because we've seen some crazy things in the currency market recently.
Yeah, so I mean, people flows in that whole Europe space, all these Russians and Ukrainians moving around. Turkey, a lot of Russians move there. Some parts of Turkey where Russians traditionally like to go on vacation, like Antalya, prices have doubled in dollar terms in a year for real estate. So it's quite incredible. And in terms of currency and people flows, Latin America has been interesting. I think Mexico is one that is worth mentioning, where there is an ongoing flood of people moving to Mexico. But now that the peso keeps getting stronger, why? Because of reshoring, which I don't think is about to cease as tensions continue. Like, let's put it this way. Geopolitical tensions are good for Mexico. America and China having a go at each other constantly. That's like the only thing that both Republicans and Democrats seem to agree on is China bashing. So as long as this is the case, and I don't think it's going to change anytime soon, good for Mexico. So it means just dollars flowing into Mexico, factories being built in the north of Mexico, just like FDI, FDI, FDI. So the peso keeps getting stronger, and Mexico is no longer a cheap destination, especially in the main areas where expats like to go to, the nice districts of Mexico City, Puerto Vallarta, Cancun, Tulum, Playa del Carmen, kind of those spaces.
Yeah.
It's objectively quite expensive, and more expensive than Europe in many cases. So what I'm seeing now is, because I always join all these like Facebook groups of like expats and stuff. I speak French, so I join a lot of these like French groups as well to get more the Euro perspective. And people are complaining that they can't afford rent in like Playa del Carmen anymore, like Europeans. They're like, oh,
I
like
was
I pay
surprised. Yeah, I was in
$700.
Playa in March, and it was when I did the conversion, I was like, this is, everyone talks about Mexico being cheap. Mexico,
No,
it's not cheap. Like
no.
not cheap at all.
If you go to the smaller towns, sure, but like even then, like it's not that cheap. We're paying like $2 for like a taco in a restaurant. I mean, how big are tacos, right? Like you need quite a few of them to be full. I compare here in the Balkans, I get like a massive, for $5, I get a massive thing full of meat. I can't even finish it. So yeah, no, it's Mexico is not a cheap destination anymore. It is not a value destination anymore. It is a lifestyle decision, and people need to understand it. And that's how I've been playing the Mexican market in terms of real estate. I'm not buying the high end expensive stuff. With my partner there, Luigi, he's a realtor in Playa del Carmen and Tulum. He helps investors make investments there, and people who want like lifestyle properties. And we bought a little building together, which was historically, I don't know, like just Mexican housing for Mexicans. So nothing really fancy. And now we bought it. It's not too far away from the beach, and it's an area that's still slightly ghetto. We're doing a light renovation, remodeling. And what are we going to put in there? Europeans.
Yeah.
Because like, the buildings with the nice pools and all that, that's for Americans. Americans can afford that. Like Americans have the means to pay for this. But former Mexican housing in slightly ghetto areas, that's where Europeans are going now.
Yeah, playing that gentrification card. Now,
Yeah.
I think you may have shared this with me conveniently after you already snapped it up. Talk us through the numbers on this particular property, because when you told me the purchase price, I was just like, oh, you bastard, how did you get that? Talk us through the numbers and then tell us more about this plan to rehab and remodel and then rent it out to fancy cigarette smoking, Shiraz drinking French people moving to Mexico.
Yeah, I don't have the exact numbers right now, but yeah,
Roughly.
roughly. Um, the house is like four 1-bedroom apartments and 1 2-bedroom apartment. We paid $200,000 for it, but it's like it's Mexican inside, so it's like the like super basic kitchen and like bad ugly bathroom, etc. We had closing costs of about 7%. But by the time between signing the promesa de venta and actually paying, the peso got stronger, so we lost a bunch of money on that. So we ended up at around like 220 all in for that.
220 for
So we'll
5 1-bedders.
Yeah, 4 1-bedders and 1 2-bedroom. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna remodel them, and then we're gonna ask for a permit to build 1 or 2 extra stories.
Ooh.
On top of the existing 2 stories. So we're just gonna like make it a lot bigger. The net yield that we're expecting, I don't know, like in the case study, I forgot what I put. I think 9 or 10%.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was
I
double
like
digits.
to be conservative on my YouTube, but we're expecting like more. But this was a bit of a special case. Like my guy called me and he's like, Luigi called me. He's like, Ladislas, like you like come down here, like come check this house. And I flew from Medellin a few days later just for 36 hours to have a look at it. I was like, cool, let's do it. But yeah, you can, if you invest in kind of multi-family housing in the slightly ghetto areas of Playa del Carmen, close to the beach, where all the gentrification is happening. So essentially, you're buying for less than $1,000 a square meter, and all the $4,000 a square meter buildings are like every 3 months they're
Moving your
taking
way.
over like
Yeah.
a street. There are still quite a few of those around, and you can get net yields of about like 8%, but then like capital gains, I think.
Okay, that's super interesting. Keep me posted on this permitting, getting permits associated with that. I'd be interested to be a fly on the wall with that discussion. How are you finding with the rising interest rates? How are you finding that affecting people's I guess, decision to come to you. Traditionally, me, when I invested in real estate, was looking for some yields. Maybe the only Australian in the world that's heard about investing in real estate for yields and not negative gearing. But anyway, when interest rates start to rise, have you noticed that people are coming to you more or less because they're saying, oh, well, look, an 8% yield, I can just kind of get 5% at my local bank. I'll wait and see. I don't want to go out and take the risk. Have you noticed any impact so far in terms of rising rates, not from a lending perspective, but just from, I guess, an opportunity cost perspective, an investor saying, oh, look, I'd rather just get 5% of my cash, wait until I see something better, rather than go further out on the risk curve?
Not really, because often people who are just playing that game of getting over levered were not interested in international real estate in the first place, because you generally don't really get leverage in international real estate when you're a non-resident. Like, you can, but then you're going to have to put like 50% down, and the interest rate's going to be super high, and the due diligence is going to be insane. It's just like, you don't want to deal with it. Well, so it hasn't impacted my business.
Rick Rule's new bank and lending policies for investors in international real estate might give your holdings even more of a boost, I guess, as people start
potentially.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Okay, so we've moved from Europe, working our way down through Central America. You and I caught up when we were in Panama City, and you were on your way to Colombia, if I remember correctly. Are you still active in Colombia, or where else in South America, technically, are you looking at the moment?
Yeah, Colombia. So with a partner of mine, we bought a large penthouse in Medellin, and we are in the process right now of doing the remodeling.
Okay. And how do you go about the remodeling process? Is that just an extra cash consideration you have when you purchase the property? Or are there, like, I'm thinking of some people I know in Argentina that get these short rate construction loans where they can get people in, do the works, and they're often tied to the peso, which just devaluates. So at the end of the day, your construction costs go down by about 30% by the time it's done. How do you approach that remodeling process? I'd be interested to
cash.
Just cash, straight up cash.
Yeah.
And then workers' wages and productivity in Colombia, good, bad, fair?
Yeah, better. I mean, actually, Colombia people work well and are okay. Well, look, no one is doing business in Latin America because Latinos are like productive. There's a reason these countries are not rich, and it's because people are generally not very productive. Let's put this up front. If on a scale, generally speaking, Colombians are a lot more productive than right now. I'm trying to do a remodeling in Ecuador, and that's complicated because people seem to be sleeping half the time. But in Colombia, that's not the case.
Interesting. And what are we talking? Because in my mind, before we spoke and at that dinner, you opened my eyes quite a bit to Medellin. Typically, people thought, oh, it's been overrun by gringos now. But are you still finding value there? So you've got this one that you're remodeling. What are we talking in terms of price per square meter, and then going to rent them out? Is it an Airbnb play? Is it to the local population? Who are you going to attract to the property?
Well, I mean, generally speaking, anywhere in the world, I'm not a fan of targeting locals for a host of reasons. One, when you target locals, you end up in long-term contracts in markets where the laws are very pro-tenant. And, the last thing I want to end up with is just being like with, Colombians long-term in a contract, and I can't kick them out. And, the currency goes crazy, and I'm stuck in a long-term contract in pesos, and I don't know, like the guy leaves, and then I'm having to kick out a single mom with like 2 kids, and and the judge headache. Like, so I just preferably everywhere I invest, I try to target foreigners, either through long-term leases, through mid-term as well, which is really big now, a few months, or short-term. I like mid-term a lot because there's less rotation.
So what, 3 to 6 months would be classified as
at least a month.
At least a month.
Okay. At least a month. Yeah. but then people often stay, 3-4 months, because when you get the neighbors less angry, you still get rates that are fairly similar to Airbnb, but you have less management, less issues overall. And they're not on like very like strong contracts. So it's easy to kick them out. Generally they leave. They don't really want to stay too long anyways. So you don't have issues with people not leaving, not paying. So that's my preferred thing. And generally as well, when you're dealing, I have real estate in Hungary and I don't rent to Hungarians, though I could. I don't know if saying this on YouTube could get me a lawsuit in Hungary for discrimination. But I don't like to rent to Hungarians because even though I have demand for that, because they know the law, and they'll be blah, 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 and this lease was not updated correctly in this clause. And with foreigners, they don't know, they don't speak Hungarian,
and they don't care.
They don't understand, they don't want to get in legal issues there. They're on residency permits. If they cause issues, I send a lawyer's letter threatening to send immigration their way. They just back off and then they just go. So generally as a rule, I don't like renting to locals wherever that is, because locals are generally entitled.
Yeah, it seems to be pretty commonplace wherever you go around the world. Let's tie investment into residency programs, because that's an area in which you are very well versed. What have been the major changes in terms of nations trying to attract foreigners and obtain either residency or sometimes citizenship through investments? What are the changes for good and for bad? Are there any that you think now are really good value? I'd be interested to get your commentary on that aspect.
Yeah, it's just getting harder and harder. Look, so two things. You've got two types of countries, right? You've got countries where they really follow the rule of law. So if you make immigration easy into that country, they don't really discriminate where you're from. So if you make it too easy, then suddenly you have hundreds of thousands of Indians and Pakistanis show up, and objectively, no one wants that apart from the UK. Then you have countries in Latin America where they discriminate. So they say these are the rules, like in Paraguay. You just need to do XYZ. You can become a resident. If you do it as an Indian, not going to happen. You're just going to get rejected and you're not going to be given a reason. So it allows them to have easier requirements, because they actually get to choose the immigration that they want, right? But even that is becoming harder, because now it's not just Indians and Pakistanis that are flooding the system everywhere. It's us Westerners, us Europeans, us North Americans, you Australians, all leaving the West because of a whole bunch of reasons. And now we are the ones flooding Mexico and flooding all these places, Panama, etc. So now it is becoming harder even for us, because we're increasingly behaving like Indians and Pakistanis, and people feel like they've had enough of us.
The beard I'm growing. The turban comes. The turban comes next. But it is interesting that you say that, because one of my fears during let's call it 2020, when I first noticed your work and got interested in this whole offshore space, was I was thinking, gee, am I going to miss out if I don't get on this train quickly? And look, things have settled down a little bit, I guess, since the whole health crisis fiasco that we had. But it's noticeable in certain pockets, particularly around southern Mexico and Panama City, just stacks of gringos left, right, and center.
Yeah.
Do you think it'll ever get to be the case where it'll be like the reverse of what we've always known, like Mexicans trying to jump Rio Grande the other way? It'll be like the Mexicans will start like pushing gringos back over the border in the opposite direction?
Yes, it's already happening. Like 2 years ago, to get the independent means visa in Mexico, you just needed to show, I don't know, like $2,200 of income a month. Now it's gone up to like $3,500 roughly.
Yeah, it's
So they're
definitely
just
telling you
making it harder
something.
and harder. Panama, a few years ago, you just needed to put $5,000 bank deposit. You got permanent residency in Panama. Now, 200K deposit. You get temporary, then only permanent after 2 years. There are other ways around it through creating a company. I helped quite a few clients with this, but it's becoming harder. So
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah, interesting. So where are the last frontiers for adventurous young gentlemen like ourselves? Where's still got a decent residency program, or at least like a 12-month easy to get working visa in a place that you might actually want to go? What's your take on that?
I mean, a place where you would actually want to go. I mean,
I,
that's
I
like,
thought I thought I should add that in there. Yeah.
it really depends what you're into. Paraguay is really easy. So if you're willing to go there, because I see it through, I send a lot of referrals to my partner there, Alexander. He helped me get residency in Paraguay. And a lot of people want Paraguayan residency, but I think then they go on Kayak or Google Flights, they look at flights and like, oh man, that's far. and then they don't do it.
Yeah, I guess not for the faint of heart. Um, Anywhere else before we type the real estate theme? Anywhere else in South America that takes your fancy? Are you ever going to enter Argentina? Are you going to take that bold step? Uh,
I have Argentinian stocks.
Really interesting.
Look,
I was looking
Argentina
at
is,
it the other way around. Like I get it. I get the bolsa. I get the thesis. I get like I should have bought EPF calls and all this sort of stuff. Anything digital in the finance system of Argentina, I just say to myself, fuck that. I'd rather buy something physical. Um, anyway, so that's interesting. Tell me about that.
look, Argentina's volatile. It's always been volatile. I think it will continue to be volatile. You know, it's in their culture. When something
I
good
hope so.
happens,
Yeah.
they mess it up. Um, it's just what Argentinians do. So it's the sort of market where it's a trade, not an investment. So why would I go buy real estate and be stuck there? And when I try to exit, it takes like 6, 7 months, and trying to get my money out
If you
is
can
really
get
hard.
one, yeah.
When I can just get ADRs in Moscow, no, not in Moscow, in I'm still traumatized by my Russian ADRs. When I can get
I got that email saying we're going to have to liquidate. All of a sudden, yeah, BP's not not allowing us to hold their
yeah.
stock. Motherfucker.
So when you
Anyway,
can get Argentinian ADRs in New York and just trade that, just like, okay, you're like, okay, I want to get out of Argentina, sell, done, end of story. It's a trade, not an investment. There are enough compelling investment cases in the world to not have to go into Argentinian real estate and all the nonsense that, it entails, which is not to say that I'm not saying that people can't make money or that it's bad, etc. It's just, I don't want to deal with this.
yeah, that's it is next level. I thought I'd get your take on it. Brazil. Not many people talking about Brazil these days. Well, everyone knows I've been hugely bullish on the Brazilian stock market for a few years now. In terms, I know nothing about real estate there or residency programs. Is there anything worth commenting on when it comes to either Brazilian real estate or Brazilian investment programs before we move on to your specific services?
Cool. So I spent like 2 weeks in Rio looking at the market. I did not make a video on it because I felt I didn't understand it enough to, talk about it on my blog or on my YouTube. But, if I'm going to, in 20 seconds, kind of say what my thoughts are, it's a very local market. There's just not that much tourism in Brazil. There's very little tourism in Brazil. It's like shockingly low. You barely see or hear foreigners even in Rio. Very little tourism. So when you buy an Airbnb there, you're essentially playing the local market, especially now as Lula has put visas back into force for Canadians and Americans and Australians. Even if it's just going to be some like stupid e-visa, it's a turnoff. So sure, I'm sure you can make money on Airbnb in Brazil, but then you're targeting the local market. if I'm going to be targeting the local market, then I might as well just buy some local stocks that are like cheap and spit out high dividends anyways, and then I can get out of a lot quicker.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those cases where I look at the market, I see, yeah, sure, there's probably some potential, but then I look at the Brazilian stock market and I'm like, this is just easier and more liquid. I don't have to deal with like Brazilian bureaucracy.
Most of them are majority owned by the state anyway, so they're getting their cut funding social programming and all the rest of it, and the dividends are just so juicy.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just, I don't know. I see Brazil, I see more of a stock market than a real estate market. But then again, like people are making money in Brazilian real estate. I've heard of people making decent deals here and there. So I'm not here to say it's bad. I'm just saying I'd rather focus my real estate in other markets, and then my equities, in Brazil and Argentina, that I'm very open to as trades.
Yeah, makes sense.
As trades, very important, because
trades, yeah.
These countries crash and burn on a regular basis.
So liquidity is key to be able to get in and get out. In terms of people listening to this that want to learn more, what opportunities do you have for them to reach out to you? Do you have partnership opportunities for investment, any syndications, or are you purely providing consulting and information services these days?
I'm busy enough dealing with my own money to manage other people's money. So for now, all I offer is consulting services. So people can find out more about that on my website, The Wandering Investor. I have a mailing list on thewanderinginvestor.com. So as I travel around the world, people can get updates in terms of investment and immigration opportunities. And then obviously a YouTube channel, and you mentioned like Twitter, but Twitter is just like me ranting and stuff.
Worth the price of admission, let's be honest. All right. So before we wrap up, I thought I might get your take on the big move, one that I'm making now, as I've shared with you. You're someone that's done it. You've left your home country. You've been everywhere, gone around the world. Take us back to when you were young Ladislas, or younger Ladislas. What was going through your mind? What gave you the confidence to make that move? What sort of fears did you have? Talk to us about what was going through your internal experience, and what helped you get through that initial, I imagine, inertia to get from where you were to where you are today.
Cool. So I don't think most people can relate to my particular situation, because I grew up with my parents being expats, and my father was a freelance, essentially university professor, getting contracts in all these different countries. And I would just tag along, end up in like a random high school in Germany, and a high school in Armenia, and in Canada, and like France, everywhere.
But then
I just kind
you
of,
wanted to go, you ended up in Africa, which is, for anyone, that's fairly adventurous. So what was going through
oh
your
yeah.
mind there? How did you navigate your way through those normal kind of doubts or excitement?
So Africa just kind of, okay, so essentially I grew up traveling around. University, I just, whenever I could do an internship overseas or take like a year studying abroad, I would do that. So when I graduated, what did I end up in a job for like trainee expat for Nestle, the food company. And then they just sent me to Africa. They're like, oh, you have experience in Asia. Yeah, we'd like to send you somewhere where you don't have experience. So we'll send you to Africa. So that's just kind of how it happened.
Okay, fair enough. Final words of advice for anyone considering at least branching out in terms of their residency options?
There's very little downside to getting a second residency. We're entering a world of, I mean, look, if we just take a step back, we look at what happened in the world in the last 3-4 years, where we had this insanity of a health situation. We couldn't travel anymore. We couldn't blah, blah, et cetera, et cetera. One. Two, we are now de facto indirectly at war with a nuclear power, much more than during the Cold War. And this is just in the last like 3-4 years. So fast forward 30 years, how much change can we expect? You add AI to it and like everything. Is it crazy to get yourself a second residency or a second passport in a completely uncorrelated market? I think it's crazy not to.
I think
You
I
know,
agree.
and I'm not saying get your residency in Paraguay and move to Paraguay. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying get your residency in Paraguay, have the call option. That's it. It's insurance.
Yeah. Insurance, wise words. Is there
Because we
anything?
don't know. Ultimately, we don't know anything.
Yeah, we don't know. So all you can do is increase your optionality, having as
Yeah.
many options open to you as you can. Yeah, it's a good point. Is there anything you would like to add before we wrap it up for this episode?
Yeah, just that we really don't know anything. And people need to stop thinking they know. We don't know. That's why I'm diversified. That's why I have suboptimal investments in my portfolio because I don't know. We don't know anything. Like we don't know. We really don't know anything. So just always keep that in mind when you're making a life decision, when you're making an investment decision. You can't go all in on anything because ultimately we don't really know anything.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know. Wise words. If you're looking for help with insuring some of your assets, diversifying your portfolio, diversifying your family's group of assets, which should include residency and citizenships, please do get in touch with Ladislas for a consulting call. Details will be in the description. My friend, a pleasure as always. I look forward to catching up for a few beers with you sometime in the near future. In the
Yeah.
meantime, guys listening, take care, and we'll be back with another episode on this channel. See you then. Goodbye for now.